Forget that. Let me give you a different scenario. It's a hypothetical. And forgive me if this is a little offensive. I try to make it not as much. How old are you? 27. How old am I? Sorry? 60. Imagine you like me. Imagine I like you. What are my needs, you think? But you think I want your body? Maybe once a month. You think I want your money? I've no need for it. Do I need a car? No. Do I need a house to turn into a home? No. Do I really want a relationship? Not particularly. I'm quite self-sufficient. Am I interested in your ideas? No. I've read books. Your ideas will never come close to the things I've read. Am I interested in your experiences? No. Your emotions, unprocessed, unrefined, raw, immature, the way you think, infantile. But I like you, and you like me. This relationship is going to work only on one condition. We go out, I talk, you listen. And you need to make sure that when I look at you, I see my own reflection. I don't want to see a dad, I don't want to see a mom, I don't care about your race, I don't care about the injustice this world has imposed upon you. None of those things matter. I want to give you the maturity that lives inside me. Do you have the ability, the capacity to receive it? Good. That's why usually people go out with their own kind. Why? Because they're at the same level, they speak the same language. And this is just a universal law. So before you can actually knock on Jesus' door and say, I'm here for wisdom, make sure you've done the Mosaic laws. Respect your parents. Know what it means to be a parent, how difficult it is to be a parent. That society breaks you, life breaks you, your own kids break you. And you have to come home with all that brokenness and put on a good face and be patient for your wife, for your husband, for your kids. It's tough, man. And then you come to a place in life where you're broken, where you say, I've done 50 years of work. I've gone to work. I've made money. I've given it to my family. I've raised my kids. They're all good. I look at my life. It means nothing. Now what? Now you need someone like Jesus. Not before, but now you do. Because you look at your physical life. It's good. You have no complaints. It's no longer sufficient. It no longer satisfies you. You want to walk away. It's like any other relationship. And you're not going to walk away from any relationship easily. You have been a creature of this world for about 50 years. How are you going to walk away? Oh man, the conflicts, they're going to erupt inside you. You're going to be angry as hell. You're going to doubt. You're going to self-hate. And we're talking about 21st century, some 3,000 years ago in case of the Buddha, some 2,000 years ago in case of Jesus. I mean, you live in a great culture. Your family loves you. Nobody travels. Nobody has money. The horses are not yet tamed. There isn't, much places you can go and visit that are especially far. Everybody is content. And despite life being simple, there were some rare creatures who found life to be completely insufficient. Now, Jameson? So let me go back and say a couple of things about being broken in the Buddhist tradition. and then we'll kind of just move on. Some years ago, a woman was walking through the market holding her son's hand. She had lost her husband. She had lost her daughter in famine of sorts. The only thing that she had left was the son, 15 years of age. And she was enormously attached to him. He was her life. He was her God. That's the only thing she worshipped, her son. And like any good mother, when you have such an altar, sacrificing is not going to be difficult. You sacrifice your time for your son. You sacrifice your money for your son. You sacrifice your life for your son. Every mother eventually becomes a sacrificial lamb that gives up everything about herself for the benefit of her child. One day, as again they're holding hands and they're walking the market, the son drops to the ground. At first, she imagines that this is a trick, She looks at him and she says, son, you, get up. But he remains unmoved. People gather around her. They try to bring him back to life, but to no avail. He's dead. If you have an umbilical cord, which happens just to be your son, and he is the source of everything, your life, your identity, your meaning, he makes up your world. The moment you lose your son, you're not just losing a son, you're losing meaning, you're losing identity. It's the only relationship worth having, and you've lost that. And all of a sudden you find yourself, as Galileo suggested, the earth is a speck of dust in the middle of nowhere. The woman, this mother has lost her GPS. She's a speck of dust in the middle of nowhere. For whom should I cook now? Whose hands am I going to hold? I'm going to clean the house for who? Whose laundry am I going to wash? She has nothing now. And the problem with grief is that it gets you to this place where, like Job, you say, I want to die. Life is just not worth living. Nothing means anything. So one day, as she's about to just take her own life, she hears a knock on the door. And she opens the door. And she says, her friend looks at her and says, did you know that we have a magician in our town whose name is the Buddha, or Jesus, in the Gospel of John? He's a magician. He can raise the dead. He can heal the sick. He can give vision to the blind. At first she says, no, it's impossible. No, I have seen it with my own eyes. Who is he or she? He's some guy, who sits over there in the town. His name is the Buddha. Really, he can do that? Yeah. So she goes to the Buddha. Of course, grief is stricken. And she says, I've been told that you can bring people back to life. Is it true? Yes. And man, she's happy. And she cries. And you would think that the Buddha would be overcome by the grief of this old woman. He's not. That's a crappy place to be as a wisdom teacher. A mother comes to you and says, my son has died. And she's screaming and wailing and tearing her clothes. And you just sit there, look at her. And he says to her, you're very selfish. What do you mean I'm selfish? You're selfish. I'm a mother. It's the selfishness that blinds you. I mean, you have to be profoundly cruel to look at a mother and speak to her in such a cold, callous way. She says, I've been broken by the gods, I've been broken by life. My son was the only meaning I had in life. And the gods or life took him from me. Bring him back to life. When you internalize grief and when you internalize brokenness in the wrong way, you become profoundly self-centered. You become a narcissist. It's all about you. It's about your happiness. It's about your success. It's about your failures. And when everything gets focused on you, you miss the big picture. What's the big picture? The human condition. So this is what the Buddha tells him. Now remember, when you're broken in the wrong way, it means that everything revolves around you. It's your grief, but you never examine the anatomy of grief itself. It's how did you become grief-stricken? You lost your son, but you never really examine what it means to have a child and whether or not children really belong to parents. Why did you have children? Because you never really examined sex and why people have sex. And you never really examined attraction. You never really examine why we desire. You never examine what it means to be human. All you know is my son died. I'm sad. I'm sorrowful. I want to kill myself. Help. And good teachers will never give in to your infantile emotions. You're fully justified to have those emotions because they are devastating. A therapist will entertain your emotions. A therapist will refer you to books. Not the Buddha. You know what he says to her? I once had a mother too. I left her, and I don't care. I had a father as well, left him too. People come to me with all sorts of problems. I don't care for their problems. Problems can only be solved if they're able to look at it the right way. And the woman says, well, what are you talking about? Are you able to look at problems the right way? My son is dead, bring him back to life. He looks at this woman and says, are you stupid? Am I speaking French to you? I'll do anything, she says. And he asks, are you sure? Yeah, I'll do anything. Okay. We have a town of 500 people. There are about 500 houses in this town. Knock on every single door. Every single door. And when someone opens the door, look them in the eye and ask, have you ever suffered a loss? If you find a single human being who has suffered no losses, I'll bring your son back. And you know, when you're self-centered, your vision is foggy. You can't see things clearly. You know, someone like comes to my office and says, my boyfriend left me. Right? What else did you expect? They'll either leave you physically, or they'll leave you emotionally, or they'll leave you intellectually. Eventually, you are the way you've always been, alone. You have a companion who can entertain you for about 5-6 hours a day, then the rest is on your own. What the hell are you talking about? My boyfriend left me. So she starts knocking door after door after door after door. And then after 2, 3, 4, 5 years, she goes back to the Buddha. And the Buddha says, I am ready to bring your son back to life. But remember, it was conditional. Give me the address and the name of the person who has never suffered a loss. And the woman looks at him and says, there was no one. Everybody either lost a parent or a pet or a son or a husband or a wife or a grandparent. Everybody has lost someone. But you see the journey. The Buddha didn't teach her anything. What the Buddha did, wanted to make sure that she understands what it means to be broken and how she can deal with brokenness in the right way. Everybody suffers a loss. Everybody is always in a grieving mode. Everybody tries to distract themselves without becoming completely broken and paralyzed. We are in the business of distraction. Just distract yourself in a healthy way. If you're born, you will get old, you will get sick, and you will die. And you don't have to wait till you're 90 to get old. Sometimes you can be a 5-year-old and you can see your dad beating up your mom and it ages you. You can see your parents divorce and it ages you. You can see your kid brother die and it ages you. People age in all sorts of ways. People get sick emotionally, physically, intellectually, spiritually. Everybody suffers a loss. And after 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, this woman going on this journey, she comes to realize she has every right to be sad and sorrowful. But the truth is, to be human is to be sad, is to be sorrowful. And then she goes home and she has a cow. She feeds the cow. She wakes up in the morning and the cow is dead. And she says, life gives and life taketh away. She's been broken in the right way. She doesn't need therapy. She doesn't need medication. She understands. That's your Messiah, understanding. All good teachers only provide for you a physical space. And that physical space is so potent that there are certain emotions that come out of you, certain thought processes that come out of you. And they protect those things day after day after day after day until you become mature. Once you reach understanding, nothing can touch you. It doesn't mean you won't be sad. It doesn't mean that you won't be broken. But brokenness will be a source of creativity. You will begin to think and reflect and understand. We know some 50, 60, maybe 100 years ago, and to some extent, it still is there today. Parents always fear when their kids marry, always. Because they know marriage is a very complicated situation. And they always worry, at least these days. I mean, before, divorce wasn't really an option. You just kind of go into a relationship and you stay in it, regardless of how it may be. Today, the story is very different. You can easily walk away. But parents always in the back of their mind have this worry. What if it doesn't work out for our kid? What if our son gets broken? What if our daughter gets broken? But you know what they have, at least they used to, I'm not sure how it is now, that maybe in a very subtle way, they always look at their kids and say, just in case, you have a rough day, the door is always open. This is your home. You were born here. You were grown here. This is your home. We are your family. Regardless, you're always welcome. And what the parents are saying is that life is unpredictable. Marriages, relationships are unpredictable. Just in case bad things happen, the door is always open. And I think that's the message of these wonderful wisdom traditions. He had mentioned something on Monday about, I had a dream or I had an experience. It's great that you can have a dream that Jesus is sitting next to you or the Buddha is sitting next to you and you guys are having, cappuccino and having a great conversation about whatever. But it's only a dream. And though the dream may inspire you, it doesn't give you understanding. It just excites you. Understanding takes a long time. And you need to be disciplined, you need to be focused, and you need to kind of always think about things that bring you pain. No different than wanting to play the piano. So, if you're a novice, You should always ask for novice teachers to guide you. Always. You should never ask for someone who's advanced to teach you. When we were interested in putting our daughter in a piano class, I called this woman, she's Persian. She was about 54, 55 or something at the time. And I said, I got your number from so-and-so. And I was wondering if you're still receiving students. The first thing she asked is, how old is she, your daughter? She's 5. I'm sorry. Money is no object. We can give you whatever you want. No. Well, why not? Are your classes full? No. I actually have a lot of free time. Well, take my daughter. No. Why? I'm no longer 30. I'm no longer 40. I'm close to being 60. I don't have the patience for the ridiculousness of 5-year-olds. I don't want to sit there and go back and forth. I want someone who is no longer a novice. I want someone who is somewhat advanced, so I can give that student the good stuff. So if you're still dealing with like infantile stuff, important, no doubts, don't seek out someone like Jesus. He's not going to help you. I mean, sure, you can sit, close your eyes and pray, and, it's a feel-good moment for you, and you can have many of them, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I'm talking about if you want to understand things practically, if you really, really want to understand, when you're 20 and your plate is relatively clean, you can spend 5 hours writing an essay. But if you're like 70, your back hurts, you got kids, you got a house, you got a car, you have to do a lot of things, well, you don't have 20 hours to spend on an essay. Be realistic. The most you can spend on writing a relatively decent essay is about maybe half hour. Your mental capacity isn't there, your emotional capacity isn't there, you're exhausted all the time. It's not because you're doing too much, just body ages you, tires you. Waking up is exhausting. Breathing is exhausting. Moving around is tiring. And now what? You got to sit yourself on a chair and look at this assignment? It's not the right season anymore. So, and the truth is, I think most of us are quite self-deceiving. In other words, the assumption is, I think I'm in the right place to learn, therefore I'm going to look for the best teachers around. And the truth is, most of us aren't ready. You shouldn't really be looking for the best teachers. You should look for someone who is really, really just mediocre. If your father just bought you a basketball, don't say, I want Michael Jordan to be my coach. He's got no patience for your nonsense, man. Just say, I want to play with my neighbor's kid. He's like 2 years old. That's a good place to start. If, for example, you've never had a father, or if you've had a relatively checkered or dicey history, hang out with people who've had, a relatively cohesive, healthy history. See what happens when they go home, how they speak to each other, how they have food together, what they do for fun and entertainment. Let that be your starting point. Don't start meditating, that's stupid. Just because you're able to put your head, dig a hole and put your head in the earth and not see anything, it doesn't mean that your past all of a sudden has disappeared. Jean-Paul Sartre, he's a great, great thinker. He's got some interesting things to say. Not all of it is interesting, but some interesting. And I'm going to paraphrase. And he did such a lousy job talking about boredom. This is me. I hate boredom. It's painful. It makes my life meaningless. It brings my life to a place of me looking at my life and having no purpose. I can't hang on to anything because everything is boring. So what do? I turn on the TV. I have 5,000 channels. By the time I find the right movie for me, it's midnight. I'm far too exhausted. I'll just pass out. Okay? You become attracted to something. You nourish it. It turns into desire. You nourish it. It turns into a want. You nourish it. It turns to a need. You nourish it. You have what you wanted. Now that you have the object, you journey into it. You have your cell phone, you just bought it. So what do? You play with it until you can get to know what lives inside its guts. What applications it has, what applications you can download. You will get to know it. Once you have it, you'll become satisfied. Once you're satisfied, you no longer are attracted. You become bored. This, like grief, they're just waiting to come out. You will never, ever get rid of them. It's impossible. You may love whatever. Having a child, getting married, getting an A, going to Yale, it matters very little what you desire. The only difference is this. You can have desires that have a 2-week shelf life, or you could have a desire that have a 2-year shelf life, or you could have a desire that have a 15-year shelf life. A 2-week shelf life is drinking alcohol. You can drink until you puke. Okay? 2-year, graduate from Laney. This is what's waiting for you. Or you're going to get married and have a child. This is almost a lifelong process because you worry about your kids day and night. Once in a while you'll get bored, but the moment boredom wants to blossom and make your entire life meaningless, your son calls you, "Mom, I can't pay rent." And you say, "God damn it, the moment I thought I am free, I get a call from this jerk." And you say, "Why can't you go to school? Why can't you keep a job?" And then you lose sleep. And then you pack up your stuff, you drive to their house, you clean their apartment, sit them down, talk to them, and you come home exhausted. What happened to boredom? Your son got rid of it for you. Anyways. Ah, man. So, any other questions or comments before we... Nothing? Sure. I'm sorry?
That covered my question.
Jameson? You flew? Casara? Casera. Getting? Ruben? Miss Charlotte? You're good? We have 5 minutes. Yeah.
There's also exception.
True. Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. Always, yeah. It's good to see all of you. Have a nice weekend. Enjoy yourselves. Not too much.